Welcome to all for this session. And just for before the beginning, there is a little factual errors while introducing our uh, speaker, Irfan Habib. Uh, I will read the bio from his new book on Maulana Azad. Yes, Irfan Habib is a widely published historian of science and modern political history. He was the Maulana Azad Chair at the National University of Education Planning and Administration, New Delhi. He is the author of To Make the Deaf Hear, Ideology and Program of Bhagat Singh and His Comrades, and editor of Indian Nationalism, The Essential Writings. I'm really looking forward for this conversation just because of a great excitement by which I have read this new amazing biography of Maulana Azad. It's 2 months back this book got released, Maulana Azad, A Life, the biography of an independent thinker and who fought for an inclusive India. At the very outset, I profusely thank you for writing such a book, that too at a decisive juncture where Indian polity stands now. Before starting our conversation, please allow me to read a small paragraph. Eric J. Hobsbawm, the British thinker and historian, makes a connection in his book Nations and Nationalism since 1780 between history and nationalism, and explains how history is reconstructed in a way that suits the ideology of nationalism and is essential to its construction. Hobsbawm compares the role of history to nationalism with that of the poppy to the heroin addict. This explains why in India today the past has become more relevant than the present or the future. Most of the political battles are fought to reclaim an imagined past and to set right imagined historical things, while the present seems to be perpetually in abeyance. I read this paragraph for entering into this conversation because this book is on an amazing personality, Maulana Azad, and it brilliantly connects with the present day India, and the book is a need of the hour. Welcome S. Irfan Habib to the conversation on I personally think that Maulana Azad's life is one that connecting and people should read and assimilate that anyone else's life. Uh, we have been talking a lot on Gandhi and Nehru in the recent decades, even Dr. Ambedkar. Let us talk and celebrate Maulana Azad now. Tell me, after writing about Bhagat Singh and his comrades, why you decided to choose Azad's life? Do you think India is paying a huge price for our cumulative or collective inattention towards Maulana Azad's life?
This is one reason by which you ended, but more than that, in the context we are living in today, Maulana as a great scholar and a great nationalist need to be revisited by us today, particularly in the context of two things. One is the context of Islam, not Indian Islam, but global Islam. What has happened to the faith, how it has been used world over, how it has been demonized. The believers themselves have done so much damage to their own faith all over all over India, all over the world. And in that context, what was Maulana's take on his faith? He was, after all, a Maulana, as we call him, great Islamic scholar, belonged to a family of Islamic scholars. So he had, and he was born in Arabia. Arabic was his mother tongue, literally. And so when he writes about Islam and writes with a comparative religious perspective, pushes Islam from the high pedestal, brings it down to the level of all other faiths of the world, including Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, etc. This is something which normally Islamic scholars don't do. They elevate Islam to a level where other faiths are looked down upon, generally look at condescendingly, that we are a faith of one God, we are monotheistic faith, no other faith is like us. So this is an attitude which has been part of the believers in large numbers. I'm not saying all, but in large numbers. Second is something which we are doing to our nationalism today. Our nationalism was a product of a freedom struggle. We went through a churning for several decades during freedom struggle. In an anthology which I did before Maulana's book called Indian Nationalism, I tried to look at, I included Maulana as part of that anthology as well. But there were people like from Tilak to Aurobindo to Bipin Chandra Pal and Sarojini Naidu and even P.C. Ray, our chemist, whom historians don't include as part of our history, building history narrative. So I used him as well. And then ended with Jayaprakash Narayan and Rajaji and finally Khwaja Ahmad Abbas. So it's a very diverse collection. Now there, I tried to show that our nationalism was a product of a huge exercise which took place in the midst of two major essentialisms around nationalism. One Hindu nationalist effort, another Muslim nationalist effort. One was based on majoritarian Hindu nationalism, beginning with Hindu Mahasabha and coming to RSS and so many other bodies later on. And Muslim nationalism, we all know, was around Muslim League. So in the middle, there was an exercise happening where people were trying to talk of nationalism in terms of composite terms. Composite nationalism, indivisible nationalism, different names you can give it, eclectic nationalism, empathetic nationalism, and these are categories I have arbitrarily used in the book. And to slot all our players of the freedom struggle with their respective definitions of nationalism. Now, what we have done it today is my fear. And that's what drove me to that book, and that's what drove me to this Maulana Azad book. Fear is same. Reflection of that fear. One was in this anthology which came out, and later same project took me to Maulana Azad to use him as a tool to fight all this which is happening around us. And Maulana is a for me one of the best choices to engage with all these deliberations happening around us.
We will get into the Maulana's position on nationalism and all later during the conversation. But in the introduction to the book, you said that it was not an easy task for researchers to put together a detailed biographical account of Maulana Azad. What were the challenges for reaching out to sources?
See, I say difficult because Maulana himself was a man of. He was actually a recluse, a solitary figure who seldom, like his attitude towards an autobiography, is reflected in. I've used in the book also. He looked at writing autobiography something like an exercise of an egotist, you know. Only an egotist will think about writing about his life. So he was very indifferent towards that. So he never shared anything, never wrote anything. What we see in the works about him is something written by others, and that also not really. And I've expressed my doubts in the book as well. The books which came out like Azad Ki Kahani, Azad Ki Zubani. And that's a book in Urdu which has not been translated into English or any other language till now. So I used the Urdu text in the book. Then there are some other accounts here and there. The only thing which comes directly from Maulana Azad is his book called Gubare Khatir, which was a book based on epistolary essays which he wrote in Ahmednagar Fort Prison between 1942 and 45. This is where Nehru wrote his Discovery of India. We all know about Discovery of India because it was in English and it was done by Nehru. It was translated into so many languages, and everybody had access to that. But Gubare Khatir was something written in the form of letters, which Maulana wanted to write to his friend, who was a senior friend, Habibur Rahman Khan Sherwani. And but the government, after he wrote the first letter, the jailer said that this jail prison will not allow you to post letters, so you can't post letters. So Maulana was disappointed, but he continued to write letters on different themes, different aspects of philosophy, about life and death, about sparrows in the prison, how the sparrows behave, how the nightingales behave. And so he was writing like an amateur ornithologist, and in quite a detail. And then writing about tea, because tea was and we'll talk about that later on, but tea was very central to his life. And he refers to it in all letters, actually begins with tea, all letters. And one chapter in the book is only about tea. The whole history of tea and his own attitude towards tea, how he looked at tea, and what sort of tea he consumed. And then music. So this was something which, where Maulana himself writes about his life. That's the question you asked me. That is the most authoritative source, because he's writing about his family, his own life, his own likes and dislikes, details, biographical details. That is the most authentic source. Others have a question mark.
What a beautiful Urdu Maulana Azad used to write, and I know this particular book, again and again I am telling you, because you know what sort of an excitement this book gives to the reader on the such a poetic, beautiful language in which Maulana Azad wrote. And he was telling about Maulana Azad's interest in music. You know, that also later we will talk about it. But when he was in Ahmedabad Fort Station, he used to, he was tuning his ears for the radio of the British jail superintendent. He used to switch on the Western classical music and all, and he used to follow that music, and he used to mention in his letters. You know, though we will come to you later. You have quoted Muhammad Habib in the book, saying that it is impossible to deny that he passed through an acute, though short-lived, period of tension during which his old ideas were completely shaken, and he adopted the progressive attitude which distinguished him to the end of his life. If I am right, Azad met Gandhi for the first time in 1920. What influence Azad made on Gandhi later, and what influence Gandhi had on Azad? Because whether Azad's father's, these Qadriya, Naqshbandi, Sufi order influences and anti-Wahhabism stance played a role in Maulana Azad in understanding Mahatma Gandhi more.
You see, when we talk about his relationship with the Mahatma, see, you know, this is something which we need to know, that Maulana became important figure during the British times before he joined the freedom struggle. He was not even part of the Congress party. He began like his career as a journalist, as a revolutionary, as a what should I say, a journalist who challenged the British authority, British might, not only in India but imperialism all over. He used to talk about in his writings imperialism in other parts of the world, including the Muslim world. And so there was a general attitude of anti-imperialism, fight against imperialism, where he is part of pan-Islamist understanding also, that the Islamic world should unite to fight the British imperialism, European imperialism for that matter, because there was French imperialism also. So while he was doing this in Al-Hilal, a paper which he brought out in 1912, which continued for 2 years, which was, according to the British, very anti-British, rabidly anti-British. And so British came down heavily. They stopped that paper. Maulana began another one, Al-Balagh from Calcutta. Even that was stopped after a few months. Finally, he was sent into exile away from Calcutta in Ranchi, in a village, where he lived for 3 years in exile. Now, in the files of the National Archives, the government declared Maulana Azad as one of the most dangerous persons in India. And I'm saying this, that he is not even part of freedom struggle. He is not even part of the Congress party. As a journalist, he became a challenge to the British government, which was forced to declare him as one of the most dangerous people around. And he was a young man at that time, in his late 20s, mid-20s. He comes out of prison in 1920, and that's when he decides to meet Mahatma Gandhi. When he meets him, Mahatma says that I went to Ranchi a few days ago, and I was very keen that I should go and come and meet you. I traveled to Ranchi, but the British government didn't allow me to meet you. And I'm so happy that we are meeting today. And that was something which from day one clicked. What they liked about each other comes out in papers later on in his writings, their relationship. And it continued to be a very close bond till the end of Mahatma's life. And they were mutual respect, which somehow developed after first meeting in 1920. And as I was talking a few minutes ago, the relationship was so informal that Maulana seemed to be the only person who could smoke in front of Mahatma Gandhi. Because I came to know for the first time, when I published a paper in Hindu, a long sort of article on Maulana Azad, which I sent to Hindu. Hindu decided to publish it with a photo from their archives. And that photo showed Maulana sitting with Gandhi, an ashtray full of cigarettes in front of him, and a cigarette in his hand, just next to Gandhi. So this is something which is very unusual. Of course, Gandhi didn't like smokers. He always had a very negative attitude towards all those who smoked. But he somehow adjusted with Maulana Azad due to high regard for him, care for him, concern for his likes, dislikes. And you could see that he has to adjust and understand whatever, according to him, bad habits he has, but he has to be a friend.
Whenever Azad's appointment with Gandhi was there, Gandhi used to make it a point that he used to ask people to clean the ashtray before Azad comes. When Gandhi's opposition for smoking, I'm just taking 2 minutes to say what happened when Gandhi met Ramanohar Lohia as a chain smoker all the time. Gandhi asked Lohia to stop smoking, but Lohia told him that we can discuss something else. Then Gandhi said that I have nothing else to talk to a socialist. You already left Congress. I have nothing to talk to, no politics I can talk to you. I can talk to you only this particular thing. You stop smoking. Then that night, Lohia wrote in his diary that somehow Gandhi gathered a courage and a authority over all others, and I can't deny that. Therefore, I am quitting smoking. Lohia quit smoking, and the most tragic thing is, on 30th January 1948, Lohia wrote in his diary that now no one can stop me from smoking, and he restarted his smoking on the day of martyrdom of Mahatma Gandhi. Here comes, Gandhi was allowing Azad to smoke in front of him. There's a quote in this book where Azad states his stand on non-violence. It is this: non-violence is a policy for me, not a creed. What does it mean? Here, how will you see the difference between Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan's relationship with Gandhi and Maulana Azad's relationship with Gandhi?
You see, we all know what was the attitude of Gandhi towards non-violence. For Gandhi, non-violence was faith. It was not a matter of policy. It was a matter of faith for him. And he believed that non-violence is the ultimate tool for any political battle he leads, and which he did. For Maulana Azad, he never said that non-violence for him is a creed, is a faith. He said it in front of Gandhi also, and we should know the background why he said it. When Maulana enters into politics, formally in 1920 as part of the Congress party, we need to see what was Maulana doing before that, besides journalism. After 1905, the partition of Bengal, there was a huge upsurge in revolutionary activities in Bengal. There was revolutionary groups, two major groups, Yugantar and Anushilin. Both the groups were anti-Muslim in the context of partition of Bengal, because that happened on the basis of Hindu and Muslim division. Most of the revolutionary groups were anti-Muslim. They didn't want any recruit in their organizations from the Muslim community. Now, Maulana Azad wanted to be part of a revolutionary group. I am saying this in the context of his attitude towards violence. And all the revolutionary groups actually didn't believe in non-violence at all. They had a different ideology. And Maulana Azad was inclined to be part of them because he didn't have that sort of attitude towards non-violence. Now, finally, he had a friend called Sukanta Chaudhary, who was very close to Shri Aurobindo. Through Aurobindo, Maulana met thrice Aurobindo, and Aurobindo finally convinced a cell of Yugantar in Calcutta to allow him to join the Revolutionary Party. And that's what he does as a young man. Then he travels to Punjab. He meets Ajit Singh, who was Bhagat Singh's uncle, a great revolutionary himself, who actually organized the first peasant struggle in Punjab in 1907, 8, 9. Formed Bharat Mata Society with Lala Lajpat Rai, organized the peasantry around Punjab, fighting for their rights. I wrote a piece in the context of farmers' protest last year, linking it with this farmers' movement which happened in Punjab, and this farmers' protest was also based in Punjab and Western UP. Now, Maulana meets all of them. So his background is not just the Congress Party's politics of non-violence based on Gandhian ideology. He had an inclination towards revolutionary politics. He spent a couple of years as part of the revolutionary groups, so his attitude was very different. But he compromised on that because he had to be part of the larger platform called the Congress. where Gandhi's idea prevailed, but he never saw non-violence as a fetish. It was always as a matter of policy, which was true with Subhash Bose as well, even Nehru. Nehru disagreed several times, even on Chauri Chaura, when Gandhi, they all remained with him, but they expressed their disagreement in public.
I quote once again Maulana Azad. I am not an abstemious man of saintly life. I used to drink. Why single out drinking? I did every kind of hateful deeds. Has he created some sort of a guilt feel? Whether we should take this sentence as some sort of a confession of a guilt feel. But the biography as a whole gives the life of a highly thoughtful, organic man. And I loved his lines. If you want to detect your faults, sit like an opponent in your own den.
No, he, when he, the part you have read from the book. See, Maulana, we should all know that he comes from a background which was a very orthodox background. His father was a Naqshbandi Sufi. He was not part of the Chishti Sufi order. Chishti Sufi order is very different. Chishti Sufi order allows you to dance, to indulge in music, to indulge in all sorts of other within quotes vices. While Naqshbandi and Sohrawardi and all these Sufi orders, they are very Puritan Sufi orders. And so Maulana's father, Maulana Khairuddin, was part of that Naqshbandi Sufi order, where all these possibilities were not available. Maulana dissociates himself from that Islam, and I have tried to raise this issue in the chapter where I talk about Islam. He spends a period of unbelief. We may not call it atheism, but it was surely agnosticism, where there were some suspicions about faith creeps into his mind, and that remains for quite some time. He writes that there was a period when he didn't even like praying. He didn't feel like saying his namaz. He didn't feel like believing in all sorts of rituals which Islam talks about, and he kept away from all of them. Now, after that, in that context, he writes that, what are you talking about drinking? I've committed so many other sins, if you call them sins, and drinking is very minor. And in that context, once Gandhi asked, and this is as Gopal's biography of Nehru, where Gandhi asks Nehru, I've heard Maulana drinks. This was Gandhi's question to Nehru. And Nehru's answer, 4 words. So what? I also drink. And that was the end of the story. Then Gandhi didn't raise it again, ever. And nobody talked about it at all. Now, when we say this, and I've used it as a like from the book, what others say about it, because there is no one who can say that he was a partner in drink with Maulana. Maulana was a solitary drinker. Nobody saw him drink, but everybody knew that he enjoys his scotch in the evening. So like he enjoyed his tea from 3 a.m. in the morning and the whole day, like he enjoyed his cigarette, he enjoyed an evening drink as well. But obviously, there was no one who could say that I shared a drink with him, which he never did.
I sadly skip many questions which I have prepared for the session, because 50 minutes is not sufficient enough to discuss such an amazing life. Let me go to another amazing side of Maulana Azad. He pursued many passions against his father's wishes. one major passion was his love for music. It is quite fascinating to know that he took his sitar to Taj Mahal in a full moon night and played his favorite tune. I never knew about it. I never knew about it. Maulana Azad could play sitar. And even in prison, as I already mentioned, his ears identified Mendelssohn's Song Without Words. Can you please say about Maulana Azad's love for music?
You see, his love for music uh, was began from his childhood. Childhood means when I was 10 or 12-year old, 13-year-old, and he used to live in Calcutta. His father was a great Sufi saint who had a large number of murids, his people who believed in his creed, and they used to gather in his house every day in large numbers. And in that gathering of people every day, there used to be one musician called Masita Khan, who used to come in a hope that one day his Maulana's father will accept him as his disciple. But because he was Masita Khan, who was a music player, who actually used to spend time with the courtesans of Calcutta, so he was not worth taking as a disciple. So Maulana got in touch with him on the quiet that I want to learn sitar. How will you help me doing it? He said, I want to be a disciple of your father. If he comes to know, then I will lose that chance. He said, no, that won't happen. I will come to your house quietly every day. And so you don't worry on that count. So this is what Maulana did for 3 years. 4 years, he used to go every day for 2-3 hours, learned sitar from Masita Khan, and then he became an accomplished sitar player. He used to go to Agra, sit behind the Taj Mahal, looking up to Yamuna, and play sitar the whole night during the moonlit night. And this is what Maulana has written himself. He said, I didn't feel like getting up. I used to spend the whole night playing sitar, sitting alone in that moonlit night. So for him, and he writes that if you want to deprive me any pleasure in life, then deprive me of my transistor. If you take it away, which I carry to prison as well, whenever I go to jail, this is the only thing which gives me solace and hope. If you deprive me of my pleasure, then just take this away. Which happened once, because he used to be allowed transistor most of the time. But once the British deprived him of that little transistor he used to carry with him. And he writes with a lot of pain that how difficult it has been for him to spend time in jail without my music.
I wish you could have written such details in the book. The book doesn't have the details which he mentioned now about how he learned sitar and all. There is only one mention that he played sitar.
No. There are details. You missed it. But what I've shared, they're all there.
Now, I'm coming to his views on nationalism. How Azad understood the idea of India, how he continued to believe in a pan-Islamic world while standing firmly with the International Congress and fighting against Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Savarkar.
When like Maulana came into the mainstream politics, he joins in 1920, and in 1923 he becomes president of the Congress of a special session which was held in Delhi. And that is a beautiful presidential address he delivers over there. So it becomes very important for the Congress party as somebody who was acceptable to different factions in the Congress, because Congress was facing some split on issues of no changes, pro changes, whether we should fight the assembly elections or not. And Raj Gopalakrishnan, C.R. Das, etc. They were all divided into two factions, pro and anti. Maulana Azad was thought to be somebody who was respected by all groups. And so he was chosen as president. Despite his age, he was just 35. Till today, he can be held as the only person who became president of the Congress party at this age, the youngest. So that was something which very special even now with Maulana Azad. Now when he does that, he is trying to define nationalism in that lecture he delivered, the presidential address, even before that as well, trying to engage with the idea of nationalism, because he had to confront two groups who had a very clear definition of nationalism. One was the Hindu nationalists, who had a very exclusive definition of nationalism, where a section of our own citizenry were left out. That is happening even now, because that is the definition they have carried forward into history and into the present. Second was the Muslim League, who believed in Islamic nationalism. Islamic nationalism, according to Allama Iqbal, who was one of the ideologues of the Muslim League, Islamic nationalism for Allama Iqbal was not territorial nationalism. For him, Islam or Islamic nationalism can't be confined through territorial boundaries, because Islam is a pan-Islamic nationalism spread into different countries all over this thing. So you can't bind it through territorial limits. Now Maulana saw all this on both sides as a major flaw in the understanding of nationalism in India, because he saw it as a composite nationalism, as indivisible nationalism, and he tried to explain to the Muslim League and to other Hindu nationalists as well, that go back to the history of Islam, go back to the history of the Prophet himself. The first nation Prophet created in Medina was the first Islamic nation after the hijrat from Mecca to Medina. That first nation was a composite nation, a nation based on the participation of Jews of Medina and the Quraysh and the Ansars. So all three groups decided to form the first Islamic nation. So Maulana said that if Prophet can do this in the early years of Islamic history, then why Muslims can't form a nation with the Hindus? Follow Prophet's life, Prophet's ideals, Prophet's history. Why go around and speak in terms of two-nation theory? So this is in brief. There are lots of other things one can talk, but with the limits of time, I can't go into details. But this is something which drove Maulana Azad towards the idea of indivisible nationalism, composite nationalism, while Muslim League always called him a showboy of the Congress party, because, and particularly Jinnah, because Jinnah wanted to prove that it is only Maulana who is with the Congress party, while all the Muslims are with us, which was absolutely a farcical idea. History doesn't prove this, because large number of Muslims were part of the Maulana Azad's idea of Indian nationalism. People say that Maulana lost the cause because India was divided, but Maulana didn't really lose the cause. Maulana convinced a large section of Indian population to stay away from Pakistan and decide India as their home. That's why we still have a large number of Muslims living in India. I'm not talking about this part of India, because it was not affected by partition in any case. North India, where all that violence happened, there are large number of Muslims still part of Western Uttar Pradesh and Bihar and except Punjab, everywhere else. It was all because a section believed that we need to be part of India and not part of Pakistan.
I'm getting into my last question, and after last 10 minutes we can have some interaction with your audience. In 2024, how do you place Maulana Azad's request to Indian Muslims to remain here? See, there is no Muslim ministers in the Indian cabinet now. there is not even a single Muslim MP representing India's ruling party. If anyone thinks that Maulana was wrong, and whether history is proving Maulana wrong.
No, this is a very difficult question because the sort of politics we have pursued over the last couple of years, because what is happening today is not something which just came about, in the past 10 years alone. There was a group of large group of people who were always putting pressure on Indian polity to go the way it has gone. So it is not something which has happened just suddenly. There are problems which with our progressive, forward-looking political parties and leaders as well, because they have not just come in from nowhere. No, something has gone wrong, and those whatever has gone wrong, we all try to understand it and comprehend it. And I'm not saying that what Maulana believed in has gone wrong. I don't think it has gone wrong. There are things which had to be mended, need to be seen through with a little different perspective, because the large number of Muslims even now, despite all the fears around them, despite the fact that their religious places are not safe, their life is not safe, their future in this country seems to be unsafe. All that is, one can see, is happening. But I still see that there will be a turnaround, because a large number of people still have faith in our democratic polity, in our democratic foundations. The foundations are not so weak that they will be shaken with this thing. And history is not linear. We always see turnarounds in history. And so 10 years, okay, we have seen all this, what is happening. Maybe a few more years, one will have to face. Some vandalization will surely take place. It has already taken place. Vandalization of institutions, of values, of our history, and of our relationships, inter-community relationships. All that has taken a toll. But I still hope that things will turn around, and we will see brighter, not so dark times ahead.
One more question from my side. What was Maulana Azad's engagement with Dr. Ambedkar?
See, there is no evidence anywhere record that they had any dialogue. Neither Baba Sahib Ambedkar writes about it anywhere, nor Maulana speaks about it. Because the records, the books I have come across, I don't see any engagement taking place between them. So it's difficult to like Baba Sahib Ambedkar, when I was doing this nationalism book, it was very difficult to find out his writings on nationalism, because he didn't write much. It's only one piece which I found, which I have used also, is from his book of 1940-41, which he wrote about Pakistan, creation of Pakistan, idea of Pakistan, and where he talks about nationality, he talks about identity, and which is very beautiful piece. And he goes to the French writers and all sorts of people who are defining nationalism, and whatever he is saying there is absolutely against the idea of Hindutva nationalism. So he is not actually their man the way he is being claimed. He is not. Well, he stood for a very, his ideas are used piecemeal. One sentence from somewhere out of context and just use it. He was anti-Muslim, he was anti-Islam, he was anti-part. So that is absolutely farcical. He was not. He was all the time critical of traditional Hinduism, divisive Hinduism, which talked about caste and divisions and all sorts of this thing within the faith, and which these people who want to create a monolith of Hinduism, which it is not, to use the vote bank politics, because all Hindus together are a major strength for them. That's what their objective is, and that's how they are using Ambedkar as well, unfortunately.
My question really is about, I mean, you talk about Azad's writings, but my question is specifically about the autobiography, India Wins Freedom. And as you know, that autobiography has come in for some criticism from certain quarters, saying that this was written, it was published posthumously, so there have been questions about its relevance and its accuracy, actually. But also, this has been coupled with the suggestion that Azad, post-independence, felt rather marginalized, and he developed a certain kind of antipathy to the people who held most of the power post-independence. I see that you have cited India Wins Freedom in a few places in the in the book. So I just wondered what your response is to this kind of view about the book itself and about Azad post-independence.
See, if you see the book, my book, I have used India Wins Freedom very sparingly. I think one or two places, not very much. Why? I'm not saying that the book need to be rubbished. That's not the idea. But we need to understand that India Wins Freedom was not written by Maulana Azad. It was dictated to Humayun Kabir. Now, who is Humayun Kabir? We all know that Humayun Kabir himself was an intellectual, a poet, a writer, a political figure, a very important functionary in different realms. So he was not just a translator or a conversationist. He was an important figure on his own. Now, when he talks to Maulana, I don't know how much Maulana is there and to what extent Humayun Kabir butts in. So I have my doubts, because when you read, I have read Humayun Kabir's other writings also on education, on culture, on so many other aspects, and you can see lots of things which you find in India Wins Freedom, which doesn't mean that you have to set it aside and don't read it, but read it with a pinch of salt. And I have always, whenever I have used him, I have tried to see a documentary evidence which proves that what is there in India Wins Freedom is true, not just on its own. So that proves that okay, that is something worth using. So not everything should. And what was the second part?
Towards the latter past, post-independence, that writing came out of certain frustration about being marginalized.
Yeah, this is something which people talk about, that he was marginalized and he was ignored. But I don't think that's true. 10 years as a minister for education, science and culture, 3 departments. Maulana Azad remained preoccupied in policy making. If you go and read the files, look at the notings, his participation in policy making. Nehru's intervention was very, very significant, because Nehru was a great enthusiast for science, for development. We all know that. And so his participation was very positively, in all these developments. But Maulana was not very indifferent, or he was not ignored, not at all. Malawi, look at his speeches, that book which Publications of India brought out. His participation is there in so many important events, whether it is a UNESCO event or it is a foundation laying ceremony of a new institution, because he was part of. Look at these Sahitya Nataka Academy, Sangeet Nataka Academy, and Lalit Kala Academy. All these were established in 1950s by Maulana. Maulana's participation in these activities was very passionate. It was not driven just by a political necessity. As I just said in the beginning, he was a great connoisseur of art, culture and music. And when he decides to establish Sangeet Nataka Academy, there is a letter, and which I have used in the book also, which he writes to Sardar Patel. And by this you can understand how passionate he was while running his government department. he writes to Maulana Azad and says that sorry for intervening in your ministry, because Sardar Patel was also in charge of information broadcasting, despite besides home ministry. Sorry for intervening in your affairs of the ministry, but I have heard that I've been listening to All India Radio, and the quality of classical music is very poor. And I feel sorry that nothing is being done to improve it. If you have no time, I am here to offer my services, because I have some experience in Indian classical music. So whosoever is in charge in the ministry, can you please send that bureaucrat to me, so I can have an engagement with him, and we can do something to improve it. So this was something not at a very official level. It was a very personal intervention to engage with music at the All India Radio services. So that way, Maulana remained very actively involved in policy making, in all whatever was happening around in India in terms of development. And I've always called the 1950s as a definitive decade, the foundational decade, we can say, where most of the institutions from IITs to IIM to all these cultural bodies, CSIR, all of them were founded during UGC. And so it was an important decade where Maulana played a very active role, rather proactive role in many times.
Sir, you are a renowned historian in India, and when we write down history, we will come across some elements of religion somewhere. We know that the fabric of religions are woven from some elements of history. So, will there be any collision when we write down history, when we come across the elements of religion? Have you experienced some collision when you write history by taking the elements of religion? I will explain.
I couldn't understand what you're trying to.
Our major religions are designed, or their elements, their main elements are standing on some elements of history.
No, religion
so will
is.
there be any collisions when we, as a historian?
Collision? No. There are, like, religion has always been part of our history. Different religions. There are conflictual situations in religion where there are conflicts. There are situations where religions have existed peacefully together. And India is a very different country. India is not like a European country where you have only one religion. No, India has always been a country which has been diverse, religion-wise. So we have learned to live together. We have learned to live in conflict also. So when you write history with all this background you have in mind. So history can't be, for that matter, ignore religions or happy living with different religions and living with conflict. So all that need to be reported by anybody who is writing history. So you just can't ignore it. Yeah.
Hi, sir. Sir, do you really think that there is a policy of current regime talk less about Maulana Azad? Because I am taking this because UGC last, I guess, 6 or 7 months back, they take back the scholarship which have the name of Azad.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. It's not just UGC. NCRT took a chapter out which we talked about Maulana Azad. So this is unfortunate, and this is all part of the broad policy of the government. We all know and we all understand why it is happening, and there are so many other things happening besides that. Yeah. Oh no, that I can't hear you without mic.
It's that anyhow influence you to take this personality into your book? Or?
That is one of the reasons, because I came across because these changes took place later, because I began my work.
I took Urdu as a second language in my degree period. That time I read about Azad on a very short chapter. That time I really think that it's the charismatic personality we only knows in the name.
Yeah, yeah.
We are specifically concentrating on the name. Apart from the name, there is a personality that should be discussed on this hour.
Yeah, that's true. You see, there are YouTube channels which are in circulation for the last several years, 6-7 years, and I don't want to name these people. They are actually running almost a campaign against Maulana Azad, calling him illiterate, somebody who went to no school or college or university, had no degree, no certificate, and he was made the Minister of Education. The education today is in a mess because we had a Minister of Education who was illiterate himself. So these sort of campaigns are being run against him without realizing, and this is being done by people whose own degrees and certificates are in question. If you ask them about their degrees, they just hide their faces here and there, and they want to question Maulana Azad's degree. So this is something which is happening on a very divisive, with a divisive agenda. And we all understand it. And unfortunately, Maulana Azad fought all his life this divisive politics. And unfortunately, we see him falling victim to the same ideology, same politics of hate.
This book is a must-read. Maulana Azad, A Life. I will request all of you, and I sincerely hope that this book will get into Malayalam too as a translation. I sincerely hope someone will publish it in Malayalam too.